And now it is my pleasure to welcome David Rosenthal, co-chair of the JNF Los Angeles Real Estate Chapter.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Rosenthal, and I am president and CEO and co-founder of Curtis Rosenthal, Inc., a super-regional commercial real estate appraisal firm. I'm also a very proud President Society donor and real estate division member of Jewish National Fund. I have the distinct pleasure of welcoming you to the first ever program of Jewish National Fund's Real Estate Division. Thank you to our generous executive sponsors for today's event. This includes Cornerstone Group, Adam Belfer of HIG Realty Partners, Steve Bram of George Smith Partners, Karen Kennedy of National Asset Services, and it's my pleasure for myself and my firm to also be an executive sponsor. You may not know this, but JNF has long been in the business of building communities that result in a higher quality of life for all of the stakeholders involved. In fact, we are the original real estate developers of Israel. Many of JNF's historic land purchases in the beginning of the 20th century were thanks to Yehoshua Hankin, a real estate agent. With a vision of bringing 300,000 people to live in the Galilee and 500,000 to the Negev, JNF is currently improving the quality of life in these areas through regional development. We are building neighborhoods, special needs facilities, medical centers, and so much more. Together, we are transforming the landscape of Israel and paving the way for generations to come. Over the years, JNF networks of real estate professionals were developed in New York, Miami, Chicago, and here in my hometown of Los Angeles, with many more regions on the way. The silver lining to COVID is that geographic barriers no longer exist since everything is virtual. So we thought it was a prime opportunity for JNF to connect real estate professionals across the country. On a personal note, I got involved with JNF 7 years ago when my youngest son Joel attended the Alexander Muss American High School in Israel. While visiting him on a parents' trip, my wife Betsy and I had the great pleasure of being JNF's guests as they toured us through many of their humanitarian projects in the Negev, including Ali Negev, the school for special needs children, which is just amazing. Also, the indoor playground at Sderot, keeping children safe from missiles being shot from nearby Gaza, and Halutza, the growing community that's making the desert bloom literally at the corner of Gaza and the Sinai. When I returned from this trip, Steve Bram invited me to join him in setting up a real estate affinity group for JNF in Los Angeles. In our first year, we raised money to buy a new state-of-the-art fire truck, which is now deployed in Kfar Saba outside of Tel Aviv, and it saves an average of 3 lives every single day. Our second year, we supported Project Baseball in Israel in building the country's first professional quality baseball stadium. Last year, we endowed an infrastructure development fund for new housing development in Moshav Idan in the Arava. We are so proud to support JNF's humanitarian work throughout our homeland in Israel. With this in mind, I ask you to consider joining our JNF family today through a real estate division membership gift of $1,800 or more. Members receive exclusive access to a nationwide referral directory. Through your gift, you will also become a member of JNF's new Eretz Society, the initial giving level within JNF-USA donor societies. We have a great program ahead this afternoon. We will hear first from JNF CEO, my good friend Russell Robinson, who will share with us plans for the visionary World Zionist Village in Be'er Sheva, followed by our featured speaker. Before we begin, let's watch a video about the village and how it will change the Jewish world.
Imagine a conversation about Israel, global Jewry, the leaders of today, of tomorrow, with people from Dimona, Denver, Kiryat Shimona, and Oklahoma. For the first time in Jewish history, Jewish National Fund is creating a conversation that will build bridges across generations, denominations, politics, and oceans. Direct from Be'er Sheva, in the footsteps of Abraham. The Jewish National Fund Israel Education and Technology Campus. A state-of-the-art village that will inspire Jewish leaders of all ages and backgrounds from all across the globe. A campus surrounded by sports fields, a 1,300-acre park, a 28-acre lake, an amphitheater, a 26-screen cinematheque, and Israel's largest mall. Be'er Sheva, a rich mosaic of people. Home to Jewish National Fund's Be'er Sheva River Park, JNF's Louder Employment Center, Ben-Gurion University, and high-tech companies. An ideal location to make Jewish National Fund's vision come true. The campus will include an internship, innovation, and technology center, the first Zionist adult education center in the world, the southern campus of our semester abroad high school in Israel, top quality conference center facilities, study areas, a food court, restaurants, a synagogue, beautifully landscaped outdoor space, classrooms, and comfortable, modern overnight accommodations for short and long-term stays. The Internship, Innovation, and Technology Center is critical to helping college graduates stand out from the crowd in this ever-changing, fast-paced world. Jewish National Fund will use its vast connections with Fortune 500 companies to help young people obtain internships. The Zionist Adult Education Center will provide a space for organizations and individuals interested in learning and exploring the beauty and greatness of the Jewish world. Alexander Muss High School in Israel is growing to 5,000 students annually. Expanding it to Be'er Sheva will help our youth learn, live, and love Israel, understand her challenges, grow as young Jewish leaders, and prepare them for life on college campuses and beyond. Join Jewish National Fund as we host the greatest conversation the global Jewish community ever had. Join us as we embark on a journey to build the first campus of its kind, the JNF Israel Education and Technology Campus, a campus that says, we believe in the future of global Jewry. In 1901, there was Theodore Herzl. In 1948, there was David Ben-Gurion. Today, there is you.
Wow, what a video. My name is Karen Kennedy, and I'm president of National Asset Services. We specialize in the acquisition and asset management of real estate across the United States. I am also a proud Sapphire Society donor and real estate division member. It is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker of today's program, JNF CEO Russell Robinson. In 1998, Russell became the youngest CEO in Jewish National Fund's history. Russell has succeeded in making JNF-USA one of the top-rated charities in the United States and the leading organization for the land and the people of Eretz Israel. He has been ranked on the Jerusalem Post's list of the world's 50 most influential Jews and oversees the organization's groundbreaking $1 billion roadmap for the next decade. It is my great pleasure to introduce Jewish National Fund's Chief Executive Officer, Russell Robinson.
Karen, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody joining today. I want to thank Adam and David and Steve and Mark and Martin. Thank you for presenting for us today. What you saw was a video about a dream, but a dream that is about us and about our conversation, the conversation that you are having today, real estate people to real estate people, we have to have as a Jewish people, whether it's Orthodox or Reform, whether it is from the right or from the left, or if it's old or young, or from Barcelona or Birmingham, Alabama. We need to have a conversation that will bring Jewish unity together, our common destiny together. And we're at that moment in crossroads, and Jewish National Fund is seizing that opportunity because it is important, as you understand in real estate, to build the foundation. You have to be strong to be able to support the building. And the foundation that we have had 120 years of Jewish National Fund, and for the state of Israel, and for all of us, the foundation that was started by our parents and our grandparents and built for us, we get to build for the generation of tomorrow and the generation yet unborn. And our village, our Zionist village in Israel, in Be'er Sheva, is an opportunity that is something the world doesn't have, where we'll all come together. Teachers will be able to come to learn about teaching about Israel. Adults will come from churches and from synagogues, Orthodox and Reform and Conservative coming together to learn about the story of Israel from 4,000 years and the story of Israel today. College students will come on our gap year program, and today in Israel, we have 25 students on gap year, a half year gap year, and in January, we're already sold out. We're also gonna have college interns, college students after they graduate from the universities and wanna spend that year in the high-tech field or in biomedical, will be able to come to Be'er Sheva, stay in our apartments, on our village, in our ecosystem, our Zionist ecosystem, be able to go to work every day at Dell Technologies and Intel, at Soroka, and come home and learn Hebrew, travel throughout Israel, and on Friday nights, be invited to our young leadership groups in Be'er Sheva for Shabbat. When they come back home, they're gonna know Avi and Avital. And as we say at Jewish National Fund, it's not about the hallways of the Knesset that is important to us. It's about the streets of Be'er Sheva and Kiryat Shemona that is going to help us build the connection to the land and the people of Israel. And our high school in Israel, our Mus High School in Israel, when we bought it 7 years ago, our dream was within 15 years to be 1,500 students from 600. Well, the great news is that we did it in 7. Today in Israel is 110 high school students. And we're having more high school students come this month, next month in March. We're going to be full to our capacity at our Hod HaSharon campus, and we're going to start bringing 5,000 high school students to Israel for a semester abroad, because it is more important than a 10 or a 12-day trip. It's an opportunity for them to live, learn, and be part of the life of Israel. And the Jewish National Fund, you get to be the builders of our connection tomorrow. And I end with a contest that we're going to be having because we want to do it right. So an architectural and an ideas competition that's going to be offered to the entire world to help us envision what a Zionist village can be, what the architecture should look like, what the pathways that connect us, not from building to building, the pathways that will connect us person to person will be. Come to jnf.org, tell people about our vision, your building of tomorrow. Imagine the newest conversation that will be the conversation for the next generation. Thank you very much.
I want to thank my friend Russell Robinson for that amazing presentation. My name is Adam Belfer, and it's my pleasure to serve as moderator for today's program, a conversation with Martin Nussbaum. Professionally, I oversee the West Coast office for HIG Realty Partners. We invest opportunistic JV equity, generally anywhere from 10 to 40 million per deal, across asset classes and markets, alongside local and regional sponsors. I'm also a proud Herzl Society donor and JNF-LA Real Estate Division member. I personally got involved in JNF in 2008 when I was living in New York, primarily due to the fact that JNF's mission developing Israel is analogous to my day-to-day job as a real estate investor. I can tell you from personal experience that there's no other organization on the planet that achieves what JNF does, improving the everyday lives of our brothers and sisters in Israel. And I'm speaking as someone that has an actual brother living in Tel Aviv. I hope that you are all inspired by what you saw. Every donor is part of that story. I hope that you would join us with a membership gift. And it's now my pleasure to introduce our featured speaker. So Martin Nussbaum is the co-founder and principal of Slate Property Group, with over 20 years of experience buying, developing, and operating real estate across the US. He currently oversees the strategic vision behind the business platform, investment decisions, and overall operations of the company. With a focus on multifamily and mixed-use properties, Martin leads strategic repositioning, ground development, and conversion projects. Slate currently operates or is developing over $4 billion of real estate throughout New York City, representing over 4,000 apartments. Prior to co-founding Slate Property Group, Martin was a co-founder and managing partner of Silverstone, a full-service real estate owner and operator in New York City. And on the personal side, my relationship with Martin goes back to 2012 when we first met. We've since become friends and partnered on 2 deals together. Martin is truly one of the great success stories in our business. I think everyone's going to get a lot of great insight from our conversation today. So we're going to do a Q&A at the end of this presentation. So if you have any questions, definitely submit them vis-a-vis the chat function. And with that, Martin, great to see you.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate you asking me to join, and I'm excited to be part of this this conversation, and excited to be part of JNF's first real estate division event for in California, or LA, or California. I'm not sure which one.
National. Yeah, I definitely appreciate the time, and again, I think I'm looking forward to kicking this off. So, to start, coming out of college, when you're starting your career, what attracted you to real estate?
So I think the interesting part about my career path actually was in college, I studied pre-med and decided to take a year off from before I went to medical school, just because I knew it was going to take 8 to 10 years to get out of medical school, and decided to go get a job. And at the time, the word on the street was everyone was investment bankers back at that time. So I went out, put out my resume with zero background whatsoever in finance, and just so happened to land on the first job offer that I got in investment banking. The asset class happened to be real estate. So that's how I kind of fell into real estate, quite frankly, was just by chance. If it would have been some other asset class, I would have gone into that, and who knows where it would have gone. But so I fell into real estate through my first job, which was investment banking at a firm called Wells Hill Partners. I spent about 3 years at the firm, just doing a lot of underwriting and analysis. And my takeaway from that was, A, I definitely did not want to be a doctor. And B, I really liked the real estate itself. And, the creativity, the financial side of it, the monetary side of it, it all sort of felt very natural and very comfortable for me. And that's when I started to really refocus myself on trying to learn all aspects of the real estate business.
Got it. And then, so you started on your own in 2008 with a focus on New York City multifamily. We all know there's no shortage of operators nor capital running around Manhattan. So how did you decide to put a stake in the ground in that particular strategy?
So, when I left the investment banking firm, I went to work for a large family office out of New Jersey that was heavily focused in residential. And so I really got about 5 years of hands-on experience in the residential market. And my last year there focused on trying to source deals for them in New York, because I lived in New York, my friends were in New York. It just sort of was my home base. So we before leaving there, we transacted on a development deal on 32nd and 6th Avenue. It was about 500,000 square feet. And it was at that point when I realized, I was like, this is what I want to be doing. It just felt right. It felt like it was something that really spoke to me and I was comfortable with. And it was time-wise, it was a really interesting time, because it was 2008, 2009, the markets were falling apart. And, when I decided to go out on my own, the opportunity really was, this is the moment in time, not too dissimilar to what we're at right now, where the world sort of stopped and the values decreased by 30, 40%. And I just felt like it was going to be an opportunity like that would be a once in a lifetime for me. So from an asset class perspective, it was something I was very comfortable with. New York was my hometown where I lived and breathed and spent all of my time. And it just felt just from a vintage of year, it felt like the right time to go out on my own. Now, for a year, because it was 2008, I sat and stared at a wall and questioned that decision every single day, because there was absolutely nothing that one could do to transact for that entire year. So for the entire calendar year of 2008, I did not do a single thing other than burn through all my savings. I had a family of four, was trying to keep everyone afloat, and it was a very, very challenging time. So, I think with every good ending, there's a very hard start. And I had an extremely hard 12 to 18 months when I first went out on my own because of the period of time that we were in.
Yeah, no, I remember that vividly. Capital markets were frozen, and it was challenging, but obviously, that was buying New York multifamily is an incredible vintage.
Yeah.
You did your first deal in 2009. How'd you find the deal? And I think what a lot of people asked me when I was talking before is, how do you raise capital for the first time as a first-time sponsor?
Yeah, so the deal actually came in through a divorce litigation. That's actually how it came through an attorney who I had met. When I first went out on my own, the one thing that I did consistently was meet with people over and over. And I remember what it was like walking into every person's office being like, will you give me 15 minutes of your time? This is what I'm doing. This is my plan. And everyone was, you have certain people who were super polite and kind about it. And then you had certain people who sort of took you underneath their wing and were like very, very open. And so there was an attorney who reached out to me and said, hey, by the way, I have this sort of unique opportunity. There's a divorce, litigation going on, and there's a building down on the Lower East Side. It was 166 Suffolk Street. I remember it very, very, very vividly. We paid about $2.85 million for the deal. I had to raise $900,000, and I say today it was still the toughest money to ever raise that I've ever had to raise. And I've raised hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of the last 20 years. That $900,000 going around to friends and family and anyone who knew me and just said, hey, look, I know this is a chance, but I will take care of every single aspect of this project, was the way I went around. And I landed up passing the hat around and put together the capital, went to a bank who took a chance on me that I was surprised they took a chance on, who financed the deal, and we were off and running.
Yeah, so then when you bought that deal, what was the business plan? How are you going to differentiate yourself from the competition? Again, because given the amount of different sponsors in New York, what were you going to do to it?
Sure. So I think, today everyone always talked about micro units and shared product, and and in New York City specifically, and I think in LA also, there's a push to sort of smaller bedrooms, but larger common area spaces, and reconfiguring layouts from older buildings. But in 2009, that wasn't as prevalent as it is today. There were a handful of operators who were executing that business model. And I really liked that business model. It made a lot of sense to me. It was something that I could really understand as someone who grew up, post-college living in the city and understanding how people were putting up fake walls, and that whole sort of business model of shared product, taking small spaces and creating community kind of feel was something that I really understood and studied for the year that I did nothing in 2008. So the business model really was to go into the building that was currently studio apartments and convert them all into one-bedroom apartments, renovate the common areas, clean up the whole experience from the street through to the apartment. And that was the business model. And frankly, I did every part of the deal. I mean, back then I was literally by myself with maybe one other person helping me. And I woke up every day in the morning, went down to 166 Suffolk Street at 8 a.m. and didn't leave there until 6 p.m. 5 days a week. And I managed every single aspect of the project. And it just, time-wise, I say this all the time, timing is so key to ability to be successful. And in 2009, as great as I think I was, and I think we do a great job, anything that you bought in 2009, 2 years later, 3 years later, looked pretty good. So I think the timing of when we got into the market, when I dove in for sort of head first, the first year felt pretty rocky. But then once it started to get some momentum, I could feel that my timing was really right. From 2009 until 2000 and almost 14, 15, it just was there was a lot of wind behind our back in New York City.
Yeah, it was a good combination. Because, I mean, initially those were more of the walk-ups were a mom and pop business, and We did a deal in that space in 2012, and then you saw 15, 16, 17, it became like an institutional asset class.
Right.
And
So funny story. So my next deal was a very funny story. This is I was the building across the street. So every single morning I would buy coffee and at 8 o'clock be standing outside, and I knew every single super on the street, all the doormen, and there was a porter and her name was Butch. That was her nickname on the street. And I would buy her coffee every morning. So me and her would sit on the stoop and wait for everyone to come out of the buildings. And then she ended up introducing me to the owner of the building across the street. And Butch made a higher commission than she's made in her entire life, introducing me to this old lady who was willing to sell her apartment to me. And I ended up buying the building across the street.
That's awesome. I want to turn it back to capital. So at HIG, we're focused in the middle market, anywhere from $10 to $40 million per deal. And it's a less crowded space than large cap sector. And our biggest competition, I'd say, is coming from family office or syndicated capital. On the smaller end of our check size range, we're dealing with emerging sponsors who are coming to us because they're tapping out at $8 million. They can't raise the hat. I said that they can't pass the hat beyond that point. Where you guys, syndicate well north of 10 million bucks, no problem. And it's you're one of the more unique groups that's able to do that. So what do you attribute that to?
I think, quite frankly, I got a little bit lucky in the sense that I have family all over the country. I was all over the country and all over the world, but more so all over the world. I was born in South Africa. My family, my immediate family moved to New Jersey when I was pretty young, but the rest of my family landed up spreading out all over the world. So today I have a lot of family in Israel. I have a lot of family in Australia. I have a lot of family still in South Africa. And through those networks, I was able to tap into some of the family office capital that you're describing. And that's how I really grew the base of my fundraising, was through sort of networking and continuing to let that splinter out in different sectors. And obviously then it happened significantly in New York, where we started to meet some larger investors and high net worth people. And as you got into that network of friends, they would introduce you to the next friend and the next friend. And, I would spend 50% of my time just networking and capital raising for the first 3 years. And again, I got a little bit lucky around sort of my background, because a tremendous amount. And then just executing, delivering good product, returning capital with good returns led to just a network of high net worth and family offices that continue to sort of reinvest. So, we didn't really do an institutional type of deal with a group like yours until probably 4 years into our growth, which is a long time, because a lot of people do 2, 3 deals, 4 deals, and then they come to an HIG or your competitors and they try to ask for that. We were lucky enough to be able to raise the capital by passing the hat around with a couple of bigger anchored investors in each one of the deals.
Yeah, no, that's great. On the new deal side, so you guys, we know a lot of the same people in the New York City brokerage community. You're constantly bombarded by brokers for new deals. So what do you, when you're looking through the pile, like what stands out? What's a good deal? What in your mind makes a good deal?
So I think the first thing is I still firmly believe, at least in New York, that 95% of every deal is coming through a broker. It's very, very, very rare for you to really have an off-market deal. Off-market deal in New York means that only 30 people saw it, not 300. So the truth is that the deal flow is significantly based off of the brokerage community. And I think that I've spent a lot of time and our whole team has spent a lot of time cultivating those relationships and delivering. At the end of the day, brokers want to know that if they're going to give you a deal and you're going to sign it up, you're going to close. And to date, we've closed on all deals that we've ever put into contract. And I think to the question of how do we sift through it? We've built a really strong acquisitions team from an underwriting perspective, from people who go out and source the deals, to underwriting it, to creating a memo that then gets sort of put together for myself and my partner to review. That's a pretty clean system. It has bumps in the roads, as obviously any company does, but running through that process and being able to go through a deal, underwrite it quickly, back of the envelope type of underwriting to get a sense of sort of, orders of magnitude of if you're in the right range, we do very quickly. And to the extent it passes that first sort of underwriting test, then there's a deeper dive into it. One of my mentors taught me a lesson, because I came out of investment banking and I came in and I was a spreadsheet guy and everything is spreadsheets and 300 numbers. And so on and so forth. And I would go into his office and he'd be eating a bagel with cream cheese, and he'd take the back of his napkin and he would write down like 5 numbers on the back of the napkin. And he's like, just fill in this napkin for me, literally with cream cheese on the top corner, and tell me 3 numbers, 5 numbers, and I'll tell you if we're going to do the deal or not. And at the end of the day, sitting where I sit now, he's not that far off from being accurate, right? If the numbers don't pass test on the first most indicative 5 numbers, then the reality is you're wasting your time messing around with everything else. It's all just financial engineering.
Love that investment committee process.
Yeah, exactly.
So I want to talk about, pivot a little bit to the operation itself. So I can't take credit for this joke, but I'll still share it. So one of our sponsors mentioned to me, if partners were so great, God would have had one. You and your partner, David Schwartz, you've been together since 2012. What was the decision, for you to take on a partner versus going solo when you started Slate, and how did you describe the overall dynamic, in terms of responsibilities?
I'm a big believer in having really high quality people around you to build a business. It's always been my general thought in growing a real business is you need really smart, arguably smarter people, not even arguably, definitely smarter people around you that are experts in what they do and can add value to sort of the overall platform. Dave and myself had known each other for 15, 20 years. We sort of got out of college at the same time, networked in the same world, and sort of we're both in the real estate space, very different spaces. He was in the ground up construction development business. And so we had worked together a little bit, prior to starting Slate. And for me, I always wanted to have a partner in my business. I think it's important to be able to share the burden of a business. I think it's important to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. I think it's really hard to run a business by yourself, at least the way I like to run my business. And I think the benefit of Dave and I is we're very, very different people in a very positive way. We share the same basics of family, of business, of doing the right thing, of being responsible, we're both hardworking, but at the same time, his responsibilities for the company are very heavily focused on construction and politics and development. And my side is a lot more on the repositioning, the capital raising, the financing, and the overall management of the company. So we work really well together. We don't step on each other's toes. And the couple times that we do, ultimately it comes down to common sense of the fundamentals that we both completely agree with.
Got it. So in terms of as you move, in terms of the overall organization, some of our sponsors we partner with are solely focused on investing and overseeing third-party, the third-party functions. Others have in-house capabilities, which you guys are in the latter group. You do everything from property management to piecing your developments with 120 employees. So what was the driving factor between growing that platform, be more full service versus subbing out to third parties?
So, both myself and my partner come from the operating side of the business. So I think that's a big difference than a lot of the competitors in my space and peers in my space that may come from the investment side of the business, right? So I think there's a very big distinction between someone who has experience investing in real estate and someone who has experience in operating and developing real estate. So we've come from the latter. So coming from the latter, as our business has been able to grow, we have always felt that we have the expertise to take on the actual operational side of the real estate, and feel that by doing so, we actually are better controlling of the asset, understanding the real-time effects of every single thing that's happening with it, and frankly, makes us a lot better of an investor. Because I know on my weekly calls that I get on a leasing call, I get on a operational call, I get on an asset management call, I get on a construction call, accounting call, I know week by week what's happening at each one of the sides of the company and what trends I'm seeing. And from those trends, we've made major investment decisions, right? So I'll give you an example. Like one of our deals that we did a condo project in Dumbo in probably 2010. And we were managing another property for a bank. A bank contacted us and asked us to manage the property for them. And we were seeing what was happening in Dumbo, which was like an up and coming neighborhood at the time with condo prices that the market had not yet understood. But because we had hands on the ground that we were seeing the real-time data, that day, we started hunting for deals saying, look, if that's what's happening in this kind of building, we need to get into this market. We need to understand it because people are mispricing it. So I think that it's a big thesis of ours, and it has been accurate to date, that by operating the real estate, the data that we have is real time and allows us to make really smart decisions.
So you started, doing the mid-block walk-ups, got into development with the the larger platform, and since then you've expanded other business lines. So obviously developing apartments and condos, the satellite office here in LA where we have a deal together, and the bridge lending platform where we partnered on as well. So what are some of the factors that led you to diversify as opposed to focusing on just the mid-block walk-ups or the ground development? And are there any principles you've applied that have been consistent across the business lines?
So I've always wanted to grow a business that has multiple business lines that can sustain different ups and downs in the market. So we're obviously all going through a very interesting time right now in the real estate market due to COVID. And there are certain parts of our business that are very much struggling because of the impact of that. Everyone is, right? But there are other parts of our business, because we have multiple business lines, that are actually doing very well, and they're performing well. We're able to make new investments, new loans, buying certain kinds of affordable housing and homeless shelters. So by being able to create different business lines, we've always wanted to create a business that's recession proof, and can different business streams can operate at a high level while others need to maybe take a step back. So, from day one, we've always wanted to create that kind of system, and we've been successful in doing it. And I think, frankly, the equity is one of the directions that has led us into some of these different business lines. So for example, the lending business, like, we got contacted by some of our private equity investors and saying, hey, we have a philosophy right now that we think we should start lending. We're looking to do it in this market, in this asset class. We think you guys would be a good source of generating that, helping us underwrite and helping management. Would you consider that revenue, like that business line? And so they've actually helped us grow certain parts of our business. And I'm open to it. I think that having good partners, of course, I need to say this, like yourself, having good partners, they add real value. And I think that if you're open to working with your partners, which you and I work together a lot, we're on calls 3 times a week, and we don't stand on ceremony that it's our deal or your deal. It's like we've all invested into a deal together, and whoever can help make the best decisions for this deal is going to benefit the whole transaction. That's our job. Our job is to execute the best way we can for everyone to make the most amount of money. And so I think that sort of underlying concept and the way we present ourselves has led a lot of partners to be comfortable with it, and has led a lot of partners to bring us into business lines that we never thought we would be involved in.
Yeah, and I look at the loan we did in that condo deal in Queens, and the thesis was, if obviously we're banking on the project performing, but in the absolute worst case scenario, you guys have the construction capability to finish the project, and that was it was definitely a risk mitigant as opposed to just doing it ourselves. I mean, definitely
Agreed.
Had a lot of value, and surprisingly, that project is selling well in spite of
But that's like a perfect example. I mean, that's a perfect example we were talking about. Being able to be a lender in this market today, right, allows me and you now to have data about a specific submarket, condo sales, that would wow anyone on this call. I mean, 2 of us in our wildest dreams would never have expected that operator to perform as well as he did and be able to sell out his units as fast and at such a price point in this market. It's shocking to me. But at the same time, it's going to mean that I'm going to go look to try and find something to do in that space because the data is right in front of us.
Yeah, no, exactly. So from sitting in the JV equity seat, we invest across the country. I can name 1 or 2 sponsors in every market that started our business coming out of the recession, built incredibly successful platforms, benefiting from the opportunities. And I always said, you're at the top of that list, given what you built such a short time at a young age. What advice would you have for someone starting their own, real estate operating platform right now, either to do or to avoid?
It's funny. I actually had coffee this morning with it's funny that we call him young now, but like young guy who was like 25 years old. And he asked me the question of like, so, what do you think I should do? And my answer to him was, I think you need to really focus on a specific type of asset class, so you're not all over the map. So really focus on what you want to try and find. Go study that market inside and out. by yourself so that you really understand it the same way that I went and spent a year really understanding sort of the shared product concept that I really believed in. And then when the opportunity is there, you have to jump. And it's never going to be perfect, right? I mean, I look back on my career, tons of speed bumps along the way, and headaches and sleepless nights, and a lot of gray hair that you see on my head comes from those experiences. But at the end of the day, if you have a lot of confidence in your business model and you see an opportunity that you know is an opportunity, there's always risk, and you have to take on the risk. If you can't take on the risk, then it's very hard to be on your own, because risk is something that's not for everyone. And I completely understand why. You know, like I don't take a lot of Advil because I'm vacationing too much. It's just a lot of stress. And even at this stage where our company is a nice operating company, there's a lot of sleepless nights every week, because you're the one who has to ultimately make the decisions, but you also get to make those decisions. And if that's what's interesting to you, you really have to pursue it aggressively.
Yeah. So for someone that wants to be in your position at some point, running a company, what's the most important personal skill that they should hone and that'll benefit them? And
I've always said that I think that if you can convince someone, and you really are, you need both of them, that you're an honest person and you're going to work really hard. To me, it's the thing that I have felt that I've tried very hard to come across to anyone investing, banks, people who work with me, and everyone around me. Like I'm going to be very direct. I'm going to be very honest. I'm going to be very hardworking. And in any business, you're going to have problems. And in any business, there's going to be good deals and bad deals, and good relationships and bad relationships. But if you can hold yourself in a manner that you maintain your basic fundamentals of being honest, direct, and straightforward, I think that the rest of the business, it all comes. You can hire a lot of people and have a lot of people working around you who can perform a lot of those services. And the guys who work for me who are in the construction business know 100 times more than construction than I ever want to know, frankly. So I think that it's about having someone really understand who you are. And once they understand who you are and there's a comfort level, they're willing to start looking at deals with you and get invested with you.
Yeah, I think being direct is one of the most important things. And I always say we're in the communications business to a certain extent. And when you and I first met, I remember one of the first things you said to me, I was talking to a deal we just went our contract on, and your first thing you said was you overpaid. We ended up doing very well on it, but no. So it's as we go through, when we're operating together, we're in the trenches. There's no sugarcoating, and I think that's when people try to sugarcoat in this business, I think it's easy to see through it, and being direct, and whether it's good or bad, I think is just incredibly important. And,
I agree.
You've obviously mastered that. So you guys are a major success story. Every business has bumps along the way. If you could look back, is there anything you would change? Anything, the biggest lesson you've learned? With that being,
I think that at a certain point, we probably got a little bit too focused on about locking up deals and closing them, and less focused on the financial payoff of those transactions as we were building the business. And I think about it often because, over a 3-4 year period of time, we probably bought 40 buildings, which is a lot. It's a lot of transactional volume. And we did it because it was in front of us. It was available. We could do it. Operationally, we were set up to do it. But what I didn't focus on enough was the time spent on each one of those deals and what the impact was, preventing me from being able to do something that would have been more lucrative purely from a financial perspective. And so when I look back, I think that I should have, at a little bit of an earlier stage, converted away from some of the really small buildings, because there was a period of time where we would do 10 unit, 12 unit, 20 unit buildings, which again is what we built our business off of. But at a certain point, when we converted over to doing 100 unit buildings to 200 unit buildings, we should have cut off the smaller stuff, because it was a huge drain on the infrastructure of the company and it wasn't profitable. So even as recently as 3-4 years ago, we would have bought a 20 unit walk-up building and we would have repositioned it and it would have been great. But the resources and the time suck that came with that it was a negative that I don't appreciate it until it was until we owned it all.
Yeah, the $5 million deals much times the $25 million deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, totally agree with you there. So just a couple more questions, then we'll turn over to Q&A. So I don't want to spend too much time on market updates and things. We've all been through a lot of those Zooms, but from your New York is obviously going through some pains right now. Probably obviously the most impacted city from this whole crisis. But looking 2 years ahead, 3 years ahead, 5 years ahead, once we have a vaccine, this is behind us, there are going to be structural changes to our economy and our cities that come out of COVID. Are there any you see kind of impacting New York?
So, the scary part is maybe it's not scary because maybe everyone appreciates it, but I think the next 1 to 2 years is going to be pretty challenging. I think it's going to be a lot of what we're seeing now. Maybe there'll be a slight sort of, comfort level once the vaccine gets out and people start to take it, hopefully the success around that. But I think that, so like for me, it's more of like the next 18 to 24 months, it's going to be a lot of what we see now. And right now is very challenging. And I'm not going to go through that because I think probably a lot of people have already heard that speech. But I think that the major changes that I think are going to happen in New York specifically, and I think it could be nationally as well, is I think retail as an asset class is fundamentally and structurally going to change. It was already an asset class that was challenged sort of pre-pandemic, but I think that I think COVID has really changed the way that everyone's like sort of viewing that way, retail. So I think retail is going to change, and I think it's going to change from a perspective of value in terms of percentage rent as opposed to even any base rents. I think a lot of the retail in New York may be converted over to residential because I think the highest and best use may change over for the next 10 years, 15 years to residential being more valuable than retail on the ground floor. So I think that there's going to be a real shift in retail. I also think the office market will be changed. I don't think it's going to be as decimated as a lot of other people do. I just think it's going to be a changed market. And from a lifestyle perspective, I think New York's going to be a little bit of a more relaxed environment. I think COVID has changed everyone in the sense of like reprioritizing what's important. And that's a good thing. That's probably a very good thing for most New Yorkers. So I think that more relaxed feel, not too dissimilar to the LA people, I think there's going to be a little bit more smiling going around New York and a lot more of like hellos and goodbyes than historically we've seen, which I think is a positive shift for New York. Yeah,
definitely. I think the experience, for me has been just, and I know you too, just understanding what's important, and you all spend more time with family. So, just one final question, then we'll do a couple of Q&As. So, you've been very involved with numerous Jewish causes, Alevi Yachad, UJA, FIDF, Eshel, both financially with your time. And I know in 2010 you went on a trip to Israel and you saw some JNF projects, and just overall you've been a huge mention and supporter of the community. Why does giving back play such an important role in your life?
Look, I mean, quite frankly, I think as a Jewish person, I think we're all in this together. I've always really been brought up that way. My father was a chazan, so I grew up in a pretty religious Jewish home. I'm not going to sing for you guys because that'll embarrass me. But I just firmly believe that as a Jew, you should give back, period. And I'm not just saying to Jewish causes because I think it should be all causes. But separate of that, I'm very focused on specific Jewish causes that I think are relevant. And I have always tried to pick one or two new ideas or one or two new organizations every 2-3 years and really lean into those while I participate in all the other ones. So you had mentioned Be'er Sheva was a small organization probably 5-6 years ago. It basically raises money to bring wounded Israeli soldiers to New York. We bring about 30 soldiers a year to New York, just to give them a good time and show them around and let them feel the love that they deserve for representing all of us in Israel. And then it subsequently turned into a much larger organization that now has offices all throughout Israel that provides prosthetic legs and arms to wounded soldiers and mental therapy and schooling. And it's turned into an organization that I'm really proud of and now I've stepped down from, and I'll find something else that I really like spending my time on. But I just really believe that as a society we should be giving back if we can. We've all been there where we needed something, and when you got it, you felt really good about it. And I plan on doing it for the rest of my life. It's really important to me.
Amazing. Well, I definitely appreciate all you do, and also giving your time for this, for this talk today. This is our first national JNF event, and I'm glad to kick it off with someone who I know and respect so well, and it's much appreciated.
Thank you. The feeling mutual, by the way. The feeling is very mutual. So I appreciate you guys picking me, and it's an honor. And Adam, I appreciate you bringing me onto this.
Oh, good. So we are running a little short on time. So the Q&A. So with that, I'm going to turn over to our co-founder of the JNF LA Real Estate Group, Steve Bram.
Hello, am I on? I'm on. Okay, hello everybody. Martin, by the way, I love what you said, more smiling in New York coming up. I love it. Hello everybody, my name is Steve Bram. I'm a principal at George Smith Partners for the last 37 years, and I'm a commercial mortgage broker and investment banker specializing in permanent and structured debt. As David mentioned, I'm also co-founder of the LA Real Estate Division and a proud Herzl Society donor. Thank you to everybody on this call for participating in today's program. I'd like to ask you to join in with us in the real estate network and be part of the JNF family if you haven't joined yet. Join us as we raise $1 billion to invest in the land and the people of Israel. Join us as we continue on our 120-year legacy of building the nation. Membership to the real estate division comes with a minimum of only $1,800 gift. We hope you'll give more. That $1,800 can be paid monthly. Your gift is, of course, tax deductible. And something new, it includes now a sponsorship in our future nationally advertised real estate program with exposure to 300,000 real estate people. And you will also receive an exclusive access to our nationwide real estate referral directory. The hope here is that all of you guys, us real estate JNF, real estate activists, will be able to connect with each other. I always say we like to do business with people who believe in the same things that we believe in. You can make your gift by going to, and I'm going to give you the address here, jnf.org/national donate 2020. So if you type that into your search block, you'll get that. If you'd like to connect with your local chapter of the JNF Real Estate Division, or start a new chapter even, or learn more about the real estate division in general, send an email to realestate@jnf.org. We hope you'll join us for our next program on Tuesday, February 2nd. Put that in your book. It's going to be an in-depth conversation with Russell Galbut, the managing principal of Crescent Heights. As you know, Crescent Heights is one of the largest developers of residential apartments and condos in the country. They've developed 50,000 residential units in 15 markets. I can't wait to hear them. Invitations will be sent out soon, so mark the date in your book, February 2nd, Tuesday. Thank you all on this call for your support, your passion, and your participation as we invest in the land and the people of Israel today and generations to come. I can't wait to be able to travel back there. Happy Hanukkah to everybody, and Am Yisrael Chai.
אז מי תרצי שאהיה